fire. All because they don't want to use their riches, their money, their possessions for God. That's what it is. They won't use their possessions for God. And so James is given documentation of them being guilty of hoarding their riches. And he says at the end of verse 3, he makes a declaration. He says, "It is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure." You have stored up your treasure. What a picture. Your treasure has been stored up. And when you look at the treasure from God's point of view, what does it consist of? It's rot. It's food for the moths. It's rust and corrosion. It's like you have a treasure chest and you open up the treasure chest and you think, whoa, there's going to be some nice things in this. And you open it up and what do you find? Garbage, rot, food for moths, and rust and corrosion. He says, you have stored up treasure. And that kind of a statement reminds the readers of what the Lord Jesus Christ said. The Lord Jesus Christ said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 and 20, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal." These individuals, these rich, unsaved people have stored up treasure here on earth. And God says, when I look at it, I see you're not using it properly. I see rot. I see rust. I see food for the moths. What does God see when he looks at your money and your possessions? What does he see? We need to ask that question individually, and we need to ask that question as a church. When God looks at my bank account, when God looks at my credit card charges, when God looks at my retirement fund or whatever the case, what does he see? And what about as a church? What does God see, Fairview, when he looks at our different accounts? Does he sit back and say, wow, you've accumulated, you stockpiled, you're doing well, you're planning for that day that might never ever come? Does he see rot? Does he see rust? Does he see food for moths? Or does he see money that has been used for his glory and for his honor? When he looks at my account, what does he see? Money is not to be hoarded. Money is not to be stockpiled. Money is not to be set aside for the day that might never ever come. And I'm not saying we don't plan for the future, but I am saying we better be trusting God. We don't want to fall into the trap of practical atheistic planning. We got it all lined up, but we've left God out. We need to learn this lesson individually and corporately, that money is not to be hoarded. James goes on to teach us another valuable lesson. It's the third lesson that we find in verse 4. And he tells us and teaches us that money is to be acquired in a godly way. How you get money and possessions is to be done in a way that is honest and ethical. When we stand before God, God's going to want to know, how did you acquire the money and the possessions? And what will we say? Will we be able to say, God, I came by means of this through godly means? You see, the wicked that James is addressing, they didn't get all of their money the right way. Some of them got money the wrong way. And in fact, that's James's second charge against them. Not only are they hoarding money, but they got their money dishonestly. They got their money in a way that is not ethical. And so James writes in chapter 5, verse 4, behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields, and which has been withheld by you, cries out against you. And the outcry of those who did the harvesting have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. James said, behold, another attention grabber. You might be dozing a little bit. Behold, there's something that I need you to see. There's something I need you to focus on. And what I need you to see and focus on is the pay, the wages, the paycheck of these workmen. And who are these workmen? They're the individuals who mowed the fields of these rich people. These rich people had land. They had property. And that property, that land had to be harvested. And so these day laborers, that's what they really were, the same guys that you might see at Home Depot, who are willing to work if you give them a job. They'll work for that day. And the Bible knows about day laborers. Old Testament knows about those individuals who would work for the day. And once they worked for the day, they're expected to be paid. And James says, behold, look at the paychecks of these workers who have mowed your field. They've already done the work. And now he says, look at their paycheck. But he says that the paycheck has been withheld, which you have withheld. You rich people, you unrighteous, ungodly rich people, you've taken these paychecks and you've withheld them so that the money is not theirs, but instead the money is in your pocket. And he says the paycheck, the wages cry out. They scream out. It's like the money's in your pocket, but screaming from your pockets is the money that you withheld from these people who have worked your land. And then he says, I want you to behold something else, not just a paycheck. I want you to behold also the cries. In the last part of that verse, he says, and the outcry of those who did the harvesting. James is letting us know that even though these workers have been mistreated, even though they've been defrauded, even though they have not received their wages, and the wicked had kept the money that is due these workers, kept it for themselves, and are possessing money dishonestly and unethically, that the response has been for these workers, these harvesters, to cry out to God. See, he's really talking to his readers now. And he's really saying, that's what you should do. Even though the wicked rich are dragging you into court, even though the wicked rich are taking advantage of you, withholding your paycheck, don't start a fight. Don't go home and get your gun. But he says, cry out. And James said, the cries. It's not just one single cry. It's the cries of those who have worked your land. They're crying out. They have cried out. And he says that they reach the ear of the Lord. What a comfort that has to be to them. That God is not ignorant of what's going on. That God is not unaware. As they're being mistreated, as they're going through hardships and difficulty, James is not promising them deliverance. But he says when you cry out to God, he will hear. He will hear. And he says that the cries have entered into the ears so that they're ringing in the ears of God. And we know that God doesn't have any ears, but that's just James's way of saying God hears and he's aware of what's going on. Whatever injustices we're going through, whatever wrong treatment we're facing, understand that crying out to God makes him, quote, aware. He hears what's going on. And the one who hears is not just anybody. James says it's the Lord of Sabaoth, not the Lord of Sabbath. Okay? A different word. So I know we're tempted when we read that last word in James 5:4, we think of Sabbath. No, this is the Lord of hosts. The God who is in charge of angelic armies. The God who is all powerful, almighty, that no one can stop him. James is picking up a favorite phrase of Isaiah. 60-some times in Isaiah talks about the Lord of hosts. Even Malachi uses it over and over again, the Lord of hosts. Do you know who God is? Is he just some little man upstairs sitting in a rocking chair? Is that who you're crying out to? Are you crying out to a God who's impotent, a God who can't do anything? Or do you cry out to the God who's the Lord of hosts, who has the angelic beings at his disposal? And James says, your cries, they've entered into the very ears of the one who is all powerful and all knowing, the one who can do something about the situation. But the point that he's making, don't get your money the wrong way. Don't be like these wicked, wealthy people. They got their money by defrauding and holding back the pay of people who worked hard and honestly. They got their money the wrong way. And you know there are some dishonest ways to get money. Since the tax season is over, one of the dishonest ways we can earn money is by lying on our income taxes. I know you don't do that. I'm just talking to the clock back there, but that's all right. Another dishonest way of earning money is don't pay your bills. You hold on to the money when you should be paying your bills. Another dishonest way is claiming disability when you ain't disabled. Picking up a paycheck. I laugh sometimes, but it's not really funny when I see people rolling out of these nice cars with handicap signs. Ain't not a problem in the world. And some of them even got nerve to be parking at the Los Angeles Bible Training School and jumping out of their nice car and no hitch, no limp, no nothing. But then you got people who say, I can't work. And they're collecting money week after week after. They can do everything else. They can even preach the gospel, but they can't work. Not earning your paycheck is a dishonest way to get money. I used to work at Xerox, talking about a loose organization. And I worked there for about 2 or 3 years. We had one guy, he would just come to work about 8:30 in the morning, take off his jacket, put it on the back of his chair, and then go to another job. And then come back. No, he would do some work, but he was actually working 2 jobs. So some of us, we sit at work, we're on Facebook. Now, we're listening to Together for the Gospel messages. No, we're supposed to be working. No, some of us even do that in Christian organizations. Working for Jesus, doing everything but the work that we're supposed to do. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, have we learned the lesson? That we are to acquire money only in a godly way. Like we say in Domino's, not all money is what? Good money. It's not. If you know anything about Domino's, there are times you pass on the money because you're trying to win. And so we need to incorporate that in our biblical thing. Not all money is good money. Another lesson, the 4th lesson, and let me go kind of rapidly here, even though I feel like I need to prolong our time with verse 5. But another lesson is that the self-indulgent use of money is to be avoided. Self-indulgent use of money. You see, James is not only concerned about the lack of use when it comes to money. That's what happens when you hoard it. You don't use it. There's a lack of use. It's stockpiling. But he's also concerned about the misuse of money. And one of the ways you can misuse money is to always use it on yourself. Self-indulgent use of money. Using what God has given you, your money and your possession, for selfish reason. And James makes another accusation against these individuals. He tells them why they have been condemned. It's not just because they hoarded riches. It's not only because of the fact that they have appropriated riches in the wrong way and gotten them in the wrong way. But he says it's also because you use your riches on yourself. And so he says in verse 5, you have lived luxuriously on the earth. You wealthy, rich people have just outdone yourself. Nobody's living life like you. You're living luxuriously. And that word that he uses, living luxuriously, has the idea of